All right, so have you ever, like, stopped to think about how we got from chasing gazelles on the savannah to, scrolling through memes on our phones?
It's mind-boggling when you put it like that.
Right. Well, get ready, because in this deep dive, we're tackling Yuval Noah Harari's Sapiens, which tries to explain just that, the whole wild ride of human history.
And it's not just some dry history book, listing names and dates. It's actually, I think, one of the reasons it's become so popular.
Yeah, it reads more like a gripping story. It's almost like, the ultimate who are we guide for humans, where we came from, how we ended up top dog.
And where we might be headed, which, let's be honest, is a pretty big question.
No kidding. But that's what makes it so fascinating and a little intimidating, to be honest.
Definitely. But Harari's really good at, breaking it down, making these complex ideas accessible, and he doesn't shy away from the less flattering parts of our history either.
Oh, yeah, he doesn't sugarcoat anything.
Yeah.
Like, for example, did you know that Homo sapiens weren't the only humans around way back when?
It's true. We often think about, Neanderthals as the classic example.
Right, Neanderthals. But there were others, too.
Yep, there were others. So the big question is, why did we make it while they, went extinct?
Yeah, why are we the last ones standing? It's kind of sobering thought.
It is. And Harari lays out these two main theories, and they're both pretty fascinating. One is interbreeding.
Interbreeding. So, like, we hooked up with the other human species.
Exactly. They got it on, and over time, those lineages kind of merged.
Wow. So, like, modern humans are basically this big mix of ancient hominid DNA. That's kind of cool.
Right. And there's actually genetic evidence to support this idea. But then there's the, less romantic theory, the replacement theory. And that one says that essentially we outcompeted our rivals, maybe even wiped them out.
Oh, okay. So not just a love story, more like survival of the fittest, but not in a particularly nice way.
Exactly. And Harari really drives home this point. Humans were driving other species to extinction long before the Industrial Revolution. Like, picture giant sloths, 20 feet tall.
Wait, seriously? Giant sloths. That's both amazing and terrifying.
Right. But they're gone, and we're a big reason why.
Wow. Okay, so that's a lot to process. But which theory is it then? Or was it a bit of both?
Likely both. We probably interbred with some and outcompeted others. But where things really get going, according to Harari, is this thing he calls the cognitive revolution.
Okay, so, like, humans finally get smart, right? What did our brains, like, triple in size overnight or something?
Not overnight. But around 70,000 years ago, something incredible did happen. Our brains basically went into overdrive. We see this dramatic leap in cognitive abilities.
So, like, what changed? Did we suddenly become, like, master tool makers or something?
Well, we did start developing much more complex tools, but it's more than just that. We created these more sophisticated social structures, and think about this, even migrated across incredibly harsh environments. Like, imagine crossing the Siberian land bridge into the Americas during the last ice age.
Talk about a rough commute.
No.
Okay, but how did they even, like, coordinate something like that?
Yeah.
This must be where language comes in, right?
You got it. Language was absolutely essential, but not just for, warning each other about saber-toothed tigers or coordinating mammoth hunts.
Right, right. There had to be more to it.
Exactly. It allowed for something much deeper, something that would change everything. Gossip.
Wait, gossip? Like, did you hear what Ugg said about Oog's new spear? That kind of gossip.
Precisely. Gossip. Because here's the thing, it allowed us to share information about each other, build trust and navigate these increasingly complex social groups.
Okay, so I never thought about it like that, but it makes sense. Gossip as, like, a social glue.
Exactly. But here's where things get really wild. Harari argues that this gossip is what actually paved the way for myths.
Myths? You mean like stories about gods and monsters, creation stories, that kind of thing?
Yes, myths. And it seems like a jump, right? But think about it. Myths, even though they're fictional, they allowed us to believe in something bigger than ourselves, something that connected us as a group.
Okay, I'm starting to see where you're going with this. So you're saying our ability to tell these stories, to believe in something together, is actually what allowed us to build civilizations.
Exactly. And it's not just ancient history. Think about it. We see this everywhere today. Religions, nations, even the companies we work for, they all rely on these shared narratives.
It's like these stories we tell ourselves about who we are and what we stand for.
Right. It's all thanks to the power of myth.
Okay, my mind is officially blown. So we went from, like, gossiping around the fire to building empires and writing constitutions, all because of these shared stories. these myths.
Mm.
That's incredible.
It's wild, right? How this ability to believe in something together, even if it's fictional, it really is kind of the bedrock of human civilization.
Totally. But okay, so at what point in this whole saga did we decide to, settle down and start farming? Like, weren't we doing pretty well as, like, nomadic hunter-gatherers? I mean, we got this far.
It's true, we were doing all right. But humans, we're curious, we're always looking for ways to improve, innovate, even if it means upending our whole way of life. Which is exactly what we did around 12,000 years ago. We transitioned from that nomadic life to a more settled one. We started farming.
Agriculture.
Exactly. And that right there, that changed everything.
Yeah, I bet. It seems so obvious, like in hindsight, right? Like, why chase our food when we can just grow it? But I'm guessing it wasn't all sunshine and roses right from the start.
You're right about that. Harari actually points out that early farming, it was probably harder work than foraging. It meant longer hours, less diverse diets. And think about it, living in close proximity to animals, all those new diseases popping up.
Okay, so if farming was initially harder, less healthy, less secure even, why make the switch? Like, what made our ancestors say, yeah, let's just ditch this whole hunting and gathering thing way too easy?
Right. No, it definitely wasn't a conscious decision, at least not at first. It was more of a gradual thing, almost accidental, you could say.
Accidental agriculture. How do you accidentally invent farming?
Well, as humans got better at, exploiting their environment, they started settling in one place for longer periods. And they started to notice things like, hey, if we drop these seeds, new plants grow, maybe we can influence this whole food situation.
So instead of following the food, they started figuring out how to make the food come to them.
Exactly. It's like this massive shift in how humans interacted with nature. And, while it was initially tough, farming, it had this huge ripple effect.
Oh, yeah, it's like the domino effect, right? Like one thing leads to another, and boom, civilization.
Right. You start to see villages turn into towns, towns into cities, and with this complexity, you need new systems. You need laws to keep things in order, ways to resolve disputes.
Oh, totally. Because you can't just settle every argument with, like, a spear fight anymore, right?
Well, they still did that sometimes, but you're right. You need some kind of framework to manage this new way of life. Like Hammurabi's Code, one of the earliest examples of a legal system.
Oh, wow. So laws were like the original operating system for society. That's a cool way to think about it.
Right. They provide a way to, define acceptable behavior, resolve conflicts, try to maintain some kind of order.
Which I'm sure was a challenge with all that extra food lying around. I bet things got complicated quickly.
Oh, absolutely. And it's interesting when you think about how these early laws, they were often intertwined with religion, with those shared beliefs we were talking about earlier. Remember the power of myths?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So you're saying those myths evolved into these more formalized systems that, dictated how people lived their lives.
Exactly. By aligning themselves with those beliefs, rulers could legitimize their power, maintain control. And this is something we see throughout history. Think about the Egyptian pharaohs who were considered to be gods themselves.
Oh, totally. Or like European monarchs who ruled by something called divine right. Basically, God said they were in charge, so don't even try to argue.
Exactly. So we've got these growing populations, increasingly complex societies, and this enduring power of shared beliefs. But of course, empires weren't built on laws and religion alone.
Right. There's a whole other side to this story, like the drive to expand, conquer new territories, spread your influence. Like imperialism, right?
Right. And this is where things get really messy really fast. Harari argues that empires, they've always been kind of a double-edged sword. On one hand, they could be engines of cultural exchange, bringing together all these different people and ideas.
Right, like the Silk Road, right? Connecting East and West, spreading goods and ideas across continents.
Exactly. But that exchange often came at a steep price.
Because you can't talk about empires without talking about, the suppression of local cultures, the violence and exploitation that often came with it.
Exactly. Empires often brought with them violence, enslavement, the destruction of entire ways of life.
It's a complicated legacy. Empires left an undeniable mark on the world, and not always a good one. It makes you think about all the different perspectives, all the different sides to every story.
And that's what makes studying history so important, isn't it? It's not just about memorizing names and dates. It's about engaging with those complexities, like you said, understanding how all of those events, even the ones that happened centuries ago, continue to shape the world we live in today.
Right, because Those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it, or however that saying goes.
Exactly. But empires, even as powerful as they weren't the only force shaping human history. There's this other, and some would say even more significant, development we haven't talked about yet, the scientific revolution.
Ah, yes. The dawn of reason. Science. And this is where Harari, he says something really interesting. He says, it wasn't just about, like, gaining knowledge, but about realizing how much we didn't know. Wait, what? I thought the scientific revolution was all about those big breakthroughs, discovering gravity, inventing telescopes, all that good stuff. How could it be about what we didn't know?
Well, think about it like this. Before the scientific revolution, if you wanted to understand the world, you looked to religious texts, you looked to tradition, to like the wisdom of your ancestors. But the scientific revolution, it came along and said, hold on, what if we questioned everything? What if we observed, experimented, and tested our assumptions?
So it was less about having all the answers, more about having the humility to say, hey, we might have some things figured out, but there's a whole lot we don't.
Exactly. It's about embracing curiosity and the unknown. And that shift in thinking, that willingness to question and experiment, it led to these incredible breakthroughs. We're talking longer lifespans thanks to advancements in medicine, a deeper understanding of the universe, new technologies that completely transformed how we lived.
Okay, but it couldn't have been all good, right?
Yeah.
Because we humans, we have this knack for taking a good thing and, well, messing it up somehow.
You're not wrong, and that's something Harari definitely doesn't shy away from. He talks about how the pursuit of knowledge, even with all its benefits, it also fueled colonialism.
Right. European powers used their scientific and technological advancements to justify all sorts of terrible things. Exploitation, oppression. It's a dark side to this pursuit of knowledge.
Absolutely. It's this stark reminder that progress, well, it's not always linear or evenly distributed. The benefits of the scientific revolution, they came at a very steep price for many.
That's a really good point. It's like a cautionary tale, Just because we're making advancements doesn't mean we're always moving in the right direction.
Exactly. It's this reminder that we always need to be thinking about the ethical implications of what we're doing, about how our actions impact others.
So we've got these incredible breakthroughs, these advancements, but also this darker side of colonialism, the exploitation, the violence. It feels like we're on this precipice of something huge, like all these threads are about to come together.
They are. And that brings us to another major development that Harari explores, globalization.
The world getting smaller,
Yeah.
right? More connected, more interdependent.
Exactly. Harari argues that globalization, it's like this culmination of centuries of, human interaction, of trade, and even conflict. It's the idea that we're all part of this interconnected web, whether we like it or not.
For better or worse, we're all in this together. But has it made the world a better place? That's the million-dollar question.
Right. And it's something Harari really grapples with. And his argument, and this might surprise you, is that it's actually made the world more peaceful.
Wait, hold on. More peaceful. With all the wars and conflicts we see on the news every day, that's a tough sell.
I know, it seems counterintuitive. But Harari argues that globalization, because it creates this interdependence between nations, it actually makes large-scale conflict less appealing.
So we're less likely to go to war with a country if our economies are, like, intertwined, if our people are connected.
Exactly. It's like, why would you blow up your biggest trading partner?
Right.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense. But even if globalization makes us less likely to, nuke each other into oblivion, does it actually make us happier?
That's the big question, isn't it? And it's something we're going to explore in our next part.
So, we talk about globalization, all this interconnectedness, but does any of that really even matter if we're not happy? Did all this striving, all this progress, did it actually get us anywhere worthwhile?
The million-dollar question right there, huh?
Right.
And Harari's answer, well, it might surprise you. He says, basically, there's no clear evidence that we're any happier than our hunter-gatherer ancestors were.
Wait, really? You're telling me all those millennia of evolution and, inventing the wheel and landing on the moon, and we're still just as likely to be bummed out by a rainy Tuesday as some cave dweller? Seriously.
It does seem counterintuitive, right? But Harari suggests that happiness, it's not just about material comfort or even technological advancements.
Okay, so what's the secret sauce then? What's the key to this whole happiness thing?
Well, he has this one line, it's kind of a brain twister, but he says, and I'm paraphrasing here, that happiness, it's when our delusions about the meaning of life synchronize with the collective delusions.
Okay, I got to be honest with you. That went a little over my head.
Yeah, it's a bit of a head scratcher. But basically, he's saying that our brains, they evolved in this world that was all about survival, about meeting our immediate needs, right? But now we're bombarded with all these choices, information overload, social pressures, all the stuff that just didn't exist for most of human history.
So we're like hardwired for a world that doesn't exist anymore. It's like
Exactly.
trying to run Windows 12 on a computer from the 90s. It's just not going to end well.
That is a perfect analogy. And that disconnect, according to Harari, well, it can lead to, dissatisfaction, this feeling that something's missing, even if on paper we have it all.
So we're like stuck on this hedonic treadmill,
Yeah.
always chasing the next thing, the next achievement, the next dopamine hit from our phones.
Precisely. And, advertising knows how to push those buttons. We're constantly being told you'd be happier if you just bought this product or achieved this goal or looked a certain way. It never ends.
Okay, but let me play devil's advocate here. Maybe our ancestors were just like content because they didn't know any better, right? Like ignorance is bliss and all that.
That's a common thought for sure, but Harari, he pushes back on that too. He suggests that true happiness, it's more about like finding meaning and purpose, about feeling connected to something larger than
Oh,
ourselves.
so it's not just about feeling good all the time. It's about like having a reason to get out of bed in the morning.
Exactly. And that reason, it doesn't have to be this grand, like, world-changing mission or anything. It can be as simple as, caring for your family, contributing to your community, pursuing a passion.
Finding what makes your life meaningful, what makes you feel connected.
Exactly. And that brings us to, like, the final mind-blowing part of Sapiens. Harari, he challenges us to, like, really think about what the future holds for us for Homo sapiens. And his answer, we might not be Homo sapiens for much longer.
Hold on, wait. Are we talking like cyborgs and alien invasions now? Did someone spike the water cooler at the deep dive headquarters?
I know. It sounds like something straight out of like a sci-fi movie, but Harari is being serious here. He points to all these rapid advancements we're seeing, biotechnology, artificial intelligence, genetic engineering. He says we're on the verge of being able to like fundamentally alter what it means to be human.
Okay, so you're talking about like gene editing, bionic limbs, brain-computer interfaces, the kind of stuff that seems like science fiction but is quickly becoming our reality.
Exactly. He even talks about this guy, Jesse Sullivan, who had both of his arms amputated, but then received these two prosthetic arms that he could control with his thoughts.
Yeah, I remember reading about that. It's incredible. But also, like, is it just me or is it a little bit creepy too? In a cool way.
Oh, absolutely. It kind of blurs the lines a little bit, right? But Harari, he takes it even further. He wants us to really imagine this future where we can like enhance our intelligence, our physical abilities, even our emotional experiences, all through technology.
Okay, so if we can actually change ourselves that much,
Hmm.
are we even still Homo sapiens at that point? Like, do we become something totally new, a different species?
That's the question, isn't it? And I don't think there's an easy answer. But it forces us to really grapple with like what it means to be human in this rapidly changing world.
It's exhilarating and terrifying all at the same time, to be honest.
Mhm.
But, here's what really stuck with me. Even with all these mind-blowing possibilities, all this potential for change, Harari reminds us that, well, we haven't figured out this whole happiness thing yet. He asks this great question. Would you choose a longer life with our current levels of happiness or a shorter life but with, like, guaranteed joy?
Whoa. That is a heavy one.
Right. Like, it really makes you think.
It does. And there's no right or wrong answer, really. It's such a personal question. What do we truly value?
Exactly. And I think that's the beauty of Sapiens. It sparks these really big questions. It makes us think about what it means to be human. It's not just some history book. It's like this mirror reflecting our own hopes and fears, our place in this crazy, unpredictable story of our species. So yeah, if you haven't already, pick up a copy of Sapiens, dive in, and see where it takes you. You might be surprised by what you discover.